Welcome to Research Debrief, the podcast where we bridge the gap between the fitness industry and the latest science in under 20 minutes. Welcome, Luke.
Hi, Rachel.
Hi. All right. Well, what are we going to talk about today?
Got a big paper just published a couple weeks ago. This is in the journal Current Biology. The title of the article, The Evidence for Constrained Total Energy Expenditure in Humans and Other Animals. This was published by a group of Duke researchers, and it has incredible implications for our industry. So let's jump into it. They're talking about this concept of constrained total energy expenditure. So here's the overview of the idea. Our assumption for decades has been when we do aerobic exercise, when we move our body, when we're physically active, we burn calories. And that's pretty well established. If you do a bout of exercise for an hour, if you increase your physical activity for a period of time, you will increase your energy expenditure. And energy expenditure means calorie expenditure. And of course, our assumption forever has been, well, that's why we should do aerobic exercise. That's why we should do some cardio. That's why we should go on a long walk. That's why we should aim for 10,000 steps. Because when we get more activity in, when we do exercise, we burn more calories. And if we burn more calories in a time period, in a given day, in a week, we can create a caloric deficit and we can lose weight or we can manage weight. That, of course, is our assumption. But what this paper shares is the constraint total energy expenditure model, which basically says that's not how it works. Now, we've had research around this for the better part of 2.5 decades. This paper is the most updated review of all of that literature. And I think it's important for our industry because, and you're going to hear me say this over and over and over on every podcast episode we record, it turns out that exercise is far better for us than we ever assumed. Like we were advocates of exercise in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. Turns out we have understated the value of exercise. However, we have mistakenly ascribed one value to exercise that it actually probably doesn't present, and that is caloric expenditure from being physically active. And so let's dive into what the paper says. Okay.
Yes, please. I want
So
to know what this means.
yeah. So we're going to make it as simple as possible. The assumption forever is that more physical activity, the more calories we burn, right? And so this team of Duke researchers reviewed all the literature that compared in both humans, most of the studies are humans, but a lot of animal studies also, to understand, well, when we burn more calories, what happens the rest of the day? And the paper introduces this concept of constrained total energy expenditure. So we go for a walk, go for a run, go for a bike ride, and our calorie expenditure increases. No surprise there. But after we perform that exercise, after we perform physical activity, our physiology automatically and naturally finds a way to conserve calorie expenditure the rest of the day. So the end result is being more active and exercising doesn't end up burning more calories at the end of the day. So here's how it would work. You burn 500 calories in a workout, then we naturally conserve 500 calories the rest of the day, and it happens automatically. So part of it is, hey, I did an awesome workout this morning. I burned 500 calories on my run. And so I'm not going to go on a walk later today. I'm not going to take the dog for a walk. So we find a way to be less active. But even when we are trying to be active, we are more sedentary. So let's take a look at what that looks like. The key takeaways: humans and other mammals automatically compensate energetically, and that means calorically, for increased physical activity. We burn fewer calories after we burn calories via physical activity. And this is called energy compensation. So energy compensation is most pronounced when we do aerobic exercise. And it's even more pronounced, according to this study, if we combine the aerobic exercise with calorie restriction in our diet. And of course, so many of us do that, right? If people want to lose weight, what's generally the first two things we do? We try to do a little bit more aerobic exercise, more cardio, and we try to eat less food. So we actually have more compensation when we reduce our caloric intake, which means we just burn less calories all day long, even more so. One of the areas where we compensate is our basal metabolic rate. So basal metabolic rate is just how many calories are we burning when we're doing nothing. So when
Yeah.
we're doing nothing, we burn even fewer calories than we normally burn when we do nothing if we've done exercise earlier in the day. And I think maybe most important and maybe most fascinating is that this energy compensation doesn't occur with all types of exercise, right? It doesn't occur after resistance exercise. So the authors noted it was just the opposite. If you happen to do a resistance training exercise, strength training of any kind, you actually burn more calories the rest of the day. So they discovered this opposite
Really?
effect. And believe it or not, this is in humans and it's in animals. And yes, there are ways to have rodents perform strength training in study. So the authors conclude, here's the big conclusion, constrained energy, that's the theory, is why people actually don't lose weight from doing cardio or physical activity. And they say that's in the studies or in the real world. Now, their final big note here is, or my final note maybe, is this doesn't mean we shouldn't do cardio. It doesn't mean we shouldn't be active. It's being active, doing cardio is really, really good for us. We just shouldn't expect the activity, the cardio, to help us burn more calories because that is just physiologically not the way it works. I don't think most people in our industry are aware of this. And I don't think we look at this as good news. I don't look at it as good news. We are supposed to be proponents of aerobic exercise and cardiovascular exercise. And I'm about as big of a proponent of cardio as you can be, but we also have to make sure that we're up to date on the research. What does cardio do and what does it not do? Wonderful for mitigating cardiovascular disease risk factors. For example, it is not effective for helping us burn more calories. And I will tell you, Rachel, there's not a day that goes by in my life where someone doesn't have a conversation with me about, well, I'm being really active, and so therefore I'm keeping my weight under control. And the appropriate response, the evidence-based response is, did you know that your activity, being more active, getting more steps in, going on a hike, going on a walk, going on a run, taking a spin class, actually does not impact your total daily caloric expenditure because we automatically burn less calories the rest of the day. One of the mechanisms here is even our sleeping caloric expenditure. So if you do cardio during the day, when you sleep at night, you actually burn less calories when you sleep because you've already done that cardio. The message is we just automatically adjust our calorie expenditure. So at the end of the day, it's a wash. It's as if we did no cardio, just from a calorie burning standpoint, which we should probably come full circle and say, it turns out that we named the type of exercise cardiorespiratory fitness, we named it correctly, right? It is for cardiovascular benefit. It is for respiratory benefit.
Yeah.
There's also probably cognitive benefit and stress relief and so forth. But we didn't name it, something to do with caloric expenditure, right?
Yeah.
However, if you survey gym goers, if you survey people in an elliptical machine, in a spin class, on a Stairmaster and say, what is your objective? What I've found is 95% of the time, I'm trying to burn calories, I'm trying to lose weight. And the research just does not support that that is the case. And at some point, I think our industry has to start sharing this. The academic exercise science community is saying, we've known this for a long time. Our industry is the conduit of everything that the academic exercise science community is uncovering. We're the ones that actually interact with the consumer. We're the ones that the consumer really listen to. So I think it's our responsibility to share this message. And I wrestled with this. This paper was published 2 weeks ago. And I wrestled with it for a while. I probably went through, a little bit of a depression because I'm such a fan of cardiovascular exercise. But at the end of the day, it's our responsibility, I think, to understand what does the current evidence say, and are we sharing this with our members?
Yeah. I mean, very interesting. And like you said, it kind of goes against what you would just the general understanding right now. And, you know, even thinking about fitness equipment, calories burned is like front and center, whether it's a treadmill, elliptical. So I could see why that would be top of mind for the consumer at least.
Yeah, and it's still accurate because we are burning those calories while we're doing it. The
Yeah.
machine in front of us, the screen in front of us doesn't say, by the way, you're going to preserve that exact number of calories the rest of the day.
Yeah. And this is why, too, around the holidays, if you have instructors maybe who are talking about pre-Thanksgiving calorie burning or burning off their meals, that's just not accurate. You shouldn't be saying that.
It is just not accurate. And it's almost ingrained in our industry and the fitness professional's mindset. And I'm including myself in that, but the research does not support it. This is not a one-off research study that's strange. It's a review of all of the current literature, and the particular researchers involved in the lab at Duke University is awesome. So important research. You might say we're not excited about the research. I still think it's positive. I mean, cardiorespiratory exercise, so incredibly valuable for us. Just don't expect it to do something that it doesn't do well. And then I was really surprised by this kind of side note that we actually found more caloric expenditure if someone does resistance exercise. And so that's maybe an important component as well.
For sure. And we've done so many episodes already about the benefits of strength training, no matter the individual. So that just reinforces that.